Hi everyone, this is a new web series for high scalability. So in this video, I'm going to explain how the website works. Let's say you're going to type a website address in the address bar of your browser, and we are going to see how exactly it works and it displays a page in the browser. So now let's assume that we type in highscalability.com in the browser, and eventually what happens behind the scene. So once you type in the address here, what happens behind the scene is depend on the basic network layer. So it consists of 7 layers, which is the OSI layer, and it is called application layer, presentation layer, session layer, transport layer, network layer, data link layer, and physical layer. If you see, our browser is mostly works under application layer and presentation layer. So we are trying to access the address using a protocol, which is HTTP protocol. So this can be secure or not secure. So once the application layer is accessing data, it moves down to the transport layer. It skips the session layer because HTTP is a stateless, sessionless protocol. So the transport layer is mainly used to control the connection reliability and how the data is transmitted. So it makes sure that no data is getting missed out while transferring the data. The network packets is the IP layer, which users for addressing. So it gets resolved in the network layer, and the control goes back to the data link layer and the physical layer. The physical layer is mainly how the data content is completely resolved in a bit stream and being transferred in a fiber cable or network cable. So we have different concepts in like HTTP, how it gets transferred using secured SSL protocol or transport layer security. So we can see those topics later. So now we understood that there is something called OSI model behind the scene to take the data that is being sent from the browser. So the user here is going to access the page, and the server that is holding the page is serving the content from the port called 80. So here HTTP is an insecure connection. So if you use the secure connection, then it is encrypted, and we use a certificate mechanism to validate the user that is requesting the web page. So if you see in HTTPS, the secure socket layer or TLS, we could see that the client is requesting a page from the server, and the server responds back with a certificate. So at the client side, we verify the data, the certificate, and see what's the trust, integrity, everything, and send back the certificate verification along with the key to the server. So server does the verification from its end, and it makes sure that there is a valid client request and certification is validated and a connection is established. And we see a secure tunnel between the server and the client. So the transport layer security that we see here also works the same way. The client is requesting access and the server responds, and after the client is acknowledged with the response, after that client is requesting for some resource along with the key, server responds with the key, and the data is being transferred. Let's say we have the TCP/IP. So what TCP/IP does is it breaks down the packet and it moves down to the network layer and hops from router to router to make sure it reaches the destination properly. So TCP/IP also controls the flow. So if the client who's accessing the page is not able to take in more data, then it can send a request to make sure the server sends limited amount so that like client can access it without losing any data. After that, there is a service called DNS lookup. So what happens, let's say like your IP address, you have entered address highavailability.com. So how does that get resolved? Because in the internet, there are so many IP addresses. So the machine readable, the name that is human readable needs to be converted to an IP address, and we need to have a mapping between these two. So that's where the DNS comes into picture. So this is a hierarchical structure where it resolves the root domains. In our case, it makes sure that it's COM, so it goes inside this one, this structure, and then within that it goes inside subdomains and correspondingly maps to a particular value which identifies that the website belongs to IP address which is uniquely identifiable. So once we have the IP address, so there is a management system where we map the management system with DNS here. So at the type A, we map it to the IP address. So this is the IP address for that particular website in the domain management system. After that, in the router section, we need to forward the incoming request to the corresponding port or the IP address that needs to get resolved, where we are hosting the pages for the server. So in this case, the incoming request service is HTTP, and the port is 80, which is the default port, and the IP address, which is internal within the home domain, is this one. So once it is forwarded, the external request gets forwarded to the internal IP address and the page gets served. So before this, we need to have a server which serves the page to the clients. So in that case, we employ a server which is like by default for Linux. You can have Apache, but I'm going to explain you based on Nginx. So Nginx is a web server and acts as a load balancer as well. And It is more powerful, and it acts as a reverse proxy as well. Let's say user access the address. So the load balancer gets the request and it removes the secured layer, and it identifies the internal private network and routes the request to the corresponding server. So here is a configuration detail to how to set up the Nginx web server locally. So this is how we set up the website domain and map it to our private network so that we can host a private network as a website from external network. Thank you.